Welcome to TikTok Tuesday. I am Alan Biggers with the IEP Coach, and today we're going to open it up for Q&A. So if you are um, hop on, feel free to ask your questions. But we're also going to talk a little bit about paraprofessionals, paraeducators. So I had a post yesterday, day before yesterday, and talking about the value of paraprofessionals on a campus, and basically they're the backbone of any campus because they do the work that's unseen behind, kind of usually behind the scenes, and without them a school would not run properly. And unfortunately they're also, in my opinion, one of the groups that get taken advantage of the most, because they're put into roles that they're not hired for. They fill gaps. I know they could start in one place on one day and then end up in another area of the school. So it becomes very large of paraprofessionals. And again, I always go back to there's not a shortage of people wanting to do the job. There's a shortage of uh, districts and schools respecting and honoring teachers and paras and staff members, because if schools were to honor their time, if schools were to honor um, what they contribute by through their compensation, if they would be more not be so micromanaging, you'd have a lot more staff, a lot more teachers on looking for jobs. And so, and unfortunately now, especially in special education, you're starting to see people leaving the profession like I did. I left last year, and just decided I'd had enough and wanted to help on the other side and to be an advocate. So, and boy, was my eyes have been opened just ridiculous amount of what I didn't know, what I wasn't told, what I wasn't trained to know. Um, and nearly 2 decades uh, is post education than in education, and that's partly my fault. But I also didn't know what to ask. I mean, I did. You don't know what you don't know, and so one of the things I've been doing is a series called Broken Promises, the crisis in special education, and episode 5 will be coming out later today or tomorrow. We're going to get it done. And we are working hard to, really, we're working hard to get these out. There'll be 8 episodes. There's already, you can go on my TikTok here. You'll find it's all on my YouTube channels, the full episodes, and they're 7 to 10 minutes apiece. So, welcome, Go Eve. Um, so, but yeah, so we talk a little bit about paraprofessionals. So, paraprofessionals, and I'm in Texas, and so this a lot of the stuff I talk about comes from the Texas Education Agency, but it applies pretty much across the country, because most of special education is all about IDEA, which is a federal law, and no state can lessen the benefit of IDEA. You can't. I mean, it's not allowed. Now they can increase the benefit, but they cannot decrease it. So a lot of this with paraprofessionals is going to hold true. Um, at least what we're going to talk about a little bit today. So a classroom teacher is always the primary teacher in a classroom. A pair is never the primary teacher. They're support. And their classroom teacher is there for all students. Paraprofessionals' responsibilities should align with the teachers and with the classroom schedule, but they need to be guided by the teacher. They should not be left to decide on their own. Again, they're not teachers. They're paraprofessionals. There are some very highly qualified paraprofessionals that choose to stay in that role, because they don't want the honestly the headache that comes with being a teacher sometimes. But paraprofessionals should spend the majority of their time on instructional activities designed by the classroom teacher, not administrative duties in the classroom. So again, paraprofessionals should be supporting the teacher on what the lessons and the instruction, and also supporting the students and their learning. But they should not be the primary, excuse me, teacher. So teachers must communicate to the paraprofessionals what they want, what their need. Um, so um, paraprofessionals should not be left alone uh, for like an entire class period, or should not be the one responsible overseeing class. Now, should a paraprofessional be left alone in a class because the teacher had to go run copies, or stepped out, or even there's sometimes maybe they serve a bigger role, the teacher's out. Um, that can happen, but you got to be real careful as far as what um, are we providing, especially in special education. You got to be real careful, because are you providing the services? And you can't provide special educational services, instructional services, with a para. It has to be a special education teacher. And so both Title One, the federal Title One regulations, so 200.59 C1, so that's of the federal code, and in the state of Texas is 230.61, require that a paraprofessional be directly supervised by a certified teacher. So directly supervised does not mean down the hall. That's not being directly supervised. It needs to be in the same room. Supervision should be connected or conducted by a certified special education teacher when a paraprofessional is responsible for IEP implementation. Um, so you've got to have um, a special education, or a teacher, special education teacher, overseeing a paraprofessional and implement the IEP. So in Texas, I see, Eve, yeah, I know that's great that you have your son has both. So what we do, what you see a lot of schools in Texas doing, they call it the para model, um, which is something that's made up, and it's not. There's a lot of there's several OCR complaints going on right throughout the state of Texas right now that are kind of in the different stages that we're aware of. But one of them, so what that you see in the para model, so what schools typically will do, what I've seen them do, is they will have a general education teacher, and then they'll have a special education teacher in a classroom as a co-taught model. They'll do it on state testing subject areas. So in Texas, we're tested at the high school level. This is talking at the secondary level. In elementary, it varies school by school, but they still use the para model. So that they will, the high school level, where you're tested on, so your end of course exams, which are the state exams. You have Algebra 1, Biology, English 1, English 2, and US History. So those are the 5 tested areas in Texas. And so, and that is changing this year because they've gotten away from that. They're going to 3 tests throughout the year, shorter tests, supposedly. We don't know what that's going to look like yet because that hasn't been rolled out completely. But so what they'll do is you'll have a certified special education teacher in the 5 subject areas that I mentioned: Algebra 1, English 2, Biology, and US History, because they're tested. And the non-tested subjects, so any kind of inclusion minutes that the student is getting, will be serviced by a general education teacher, so that, and then a paraprofessional. That is what's called the para model, and it is 110% against both state and federal law. Schools will tell their staff that it's not, that it's okay. that we've talked to the state, and that's okay. It's not. We've actually talked in the last couple of weeks to Texas Education Agency, and we have some received some documentation. Hello, Stooks. Hello, Hussam. Hello, Lucy Kerr. Welcome. So, but yes, we have had some documentation, or have gotten some responses back from the deputy commissioner, and the paramodel is not a something that it can be done. I mean, it's not. So, what happens is a paraprofessional, again, they're making pennies. I mean, they really are. I still to this day don't understand how, as a school system, we can get off paying somebody who is so vital to a school 12, 10, 12, $13 an hour, and how you expect anybody to live off that. Um, Most parents either have a second job, have to have a second source of income, whether it be we have a lot of military here where I'm currently at. So you have a lot of military retirees, military pensions. They either have a spouse that works, or they have to work multiple jobs, and so it's just wrong. And then we put them in a bad position because they're not trained to be a teacher. Many of them want to be. They may be in school for a teacher. That's great, but they're very much taken advantage of. I've seen that time and time again. And then I've seen administration just flat out lie. I mean, I don't know how else to explain it. It's a flat out lie. They'll say, "Well, we've gotten approval from the state for you, so you can be the teacher. We've got a waiver. There's no such thing as a special education certificate, teacher certification waiver. You either are certified special education or you're not. There has never been, and never will be, at least that's what we're told. But there never has been. Not even during COVID was there ever a waiver for special education certification. There is no such thing as emergency. There's no such thing as they're in a program and they're working towards it. If they are not certified, they cannot be a special education teacher. And it is. I know that ruffles some feather, and I know that's people have been given misinformation and led to believe, and nobody could understand why. Why would we be told differently? Well, when it comes down to it, it's the perception of compliance. So if they tell everybody, including parents, hey, we've got a paraprofessional in there, and she's a special education paraprofessional. Well, there's no such thing. And then it also is a money issue. Uh, they put special education teachers in tested subjects, but not in non-tested subjects. I mean, that tells you the value of a special education teacher, because the schools are graded in their accountability based on how the students perform on these tests, these tested subjects. And so, if what's that mean? Hang on. Sorry, getting things popping up on my screen. Um, so their schools are their accountability, the schools ratings in Texas, who do an A through F, is a big section of that is how students perform on these their testing. But third grade, um, in middle school, elementary school, middle school, and high school. And so or all my experience has been at the high school level, a little bit of middle school, but mainly high school level. So that's what I'm most familiar with. But schools will put special education teachers in those classes that are tested and which are accountability. So that tells you right there that they understand a special education teacher. And then they will put a paraprofessional in the non-tested areas and have them serve as special education help. Can they do that? Yes, there are ways in which a special education or not special education, a paraprofessional can support a special education students, but they have and special education teacher, and that doesn't mean that that special education teacher is down the hall and comes into the classroom once a week or once a semester, or even just pops in once a day. Being Working with a uh, paraprofessional as a special education teacher means y'all need to be in the same classroom. Okay. I mean, there are obviously times when the teacher might step out, go to the restroom, go get coffee, go to the mailbox. I mean, have to go call a parent. There's all sorts of things. And so reasons, and those are okay. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. What happens is though, as you see way too often, is that paraprofessionals are left in there to instruct. They're left in there alone to supervise. And although many of them are more than capable of doing that, they're not allowed to do that. And that's an IDEA. Here's some kind of roles and responsibilities. Here's some things that paraprofessionals can do. They can assist individual students and groups of students as directed by the teacher. Our education classroom only when designated per a student's IEP. They can assist in grading assignments or tests that have clear answers or help grade those. Can assist in the implementation of a behavior intervention plan, a BIP, of the class or the lesson. Can assist in the collection of data on the student's mastery of behavior and academic goals and objectives using criteria developed by the special education teacher. Can assist in clerical recording of grades. Can assist in collecting and recording attendance information. Appropriate and document per the student's IEP as directed by the teacher. Provide any information requested by the teacher or administrator for the development of the IEPs. If you're not a special education teacher, you don't develop an IEP. Um, you can get input. You can get input from the parent. Absolutely, if you work with a student, you want input. Um, Heck, it's even great if they could come to the IEP meeting, which never happens, but it'd be awesome because they can provide valuable information. So a pair can assist the teacher in the implementation of a classroom management system. So managing your classroom, can supervise hallways, playgrounds, play areas as directed by administration, can assist with other clerical duties in the classroom, like organization of materials, making copies, etc., but as directed by the teacher. Paraprofessionals cannot develop lesson plans. They cannot introduce new content in a lesson. They cannot provide the direct teach portion of a lesson. They cannot select materials for the implementation of the lesson. They cannot assign final grades for a class. They cannot develop IEP goals and objectives. They cannot design the classroom management system. And they cannot be responsible for determining or reporting student progress for either general education or special education goals. So that is 200.59 on the IDE on the federal code. So what does that mean? That means a paraprofessional should not be the one leading the class. They should be supporting. That's what their role. They're a support role. And then we go what we like to do is hire them in place of a teacher, where you can pay a half or a third of what it costs to pay a teacher. Um, and it's just taking advantage of people. I've never understood why as educators, and we get guilted into it. So I know that we're asked to take on additional roles because kids need it, and you're short staffed or you don't have a person that can do it, and you're guilted into doing this. Hey, you're doing it for the kids. We need your. I mean, but get no additional compensation, no, you know, no, you don't get compensation, you don't get like an extra time off, or I mean, there's no sense in it. And part of that problem is I know in some states where teachers can be unionized, it's a little bit different. Texas is a non-union state. We're at will state, or work at will. So it means in the real world, I say real world, outside education, you can be let go for any reason. They do not have to. I mean, you come into a job and they don't like the way you brushed your hair. Technically, they can let you go. I mean, it's that's kind of how it is. As a teacher, you sign a contract, so you have a 10-month contract, at least 10 or 11 month. As an administrator, it might be a 12-month or an 11-month. But you come in, you sign a contract for a year, and so you're guaranteed a job for a year as long as you don't do something dumb, um, and get yourself fired, or do something stupid. But so but in Texas, we can't. The teachers are not allowed to strike. Teachers are not allowed. There's no collective bargaining. And so, because of that, we have associations that do represent teachers and they help teachers, different teacher organizations, but it's all done individually. There's nothing collective. And so, when you have something going on in a district or a state, teachers really don't have any way of coming together. There's been some attempts out there. Um, through social media to try to bring teachers in together. And some of them have been more successful than others, but none of them have been greatly successful. So what happens is a paraprofessional, schools will hire a paraprofessional when they actually should hire a special education teacher to put that pair in that role and ask them to do the duties and responsibilities of an actual teacher. And then they will pay them a third. So it's a money saver. They also will bring teachers in and under the guise of making up a new title. I mean, so there's only certain things that are certified, at least in Texas, that the education agency oversees. One of those is a teacher, administrator, counselor, superintendent, and then you have some of your related services like a school psychologist, an LSSP, a diag, a counselor, or, I mean, a special ed counselor, or psychologist, I guess. Um, those are all certified. I may be missing a couple, but that's what's certified. So a paraprofessional has in Texas, there are three levels of certification: tier 1, 2, and 3. It's based on experience, based on college hours, college degree, but y- they bring you in and pay you nothing. Um, and we do have mandatory retirement that you have to contribute to. Obviously, you have health benefits, which we all know are going through the roof. And so, and they get worse every year. That you pay more and get worse. Um, and so, yeah, um, paraprofessionals, basically get back to all of that. Paraprofessionals are very, very much taken advantage of. And honestly, a school wouldn't function without paraprofessionals. I mean, I use paraprofessionals kind of loosely because I know a paraprofessional or educator is what we're thinking of in the classroom, but you use that same role throughout the campus. So, a secretary, office secretary, or an AP secretary, or principal secretary, those kind of fall not necessarily as a paraprofessional, their duties, but the pay is basically the same, at least for us. That's what I've seen. Anyways, it just shows the priority. And then you have central office people making six figures that you never see. And yet they want to throw things at the school, at the teachers, at the campus administrators that they have to do. And most of it, in my opinion, is just to justify their existence and to have a job. So, do we have any questions? I see we got quite a few got quite a few, looks like, on, or at least have popped on. I don't really see any questions coming up. And if you have one, feel free to ask. So at the IEP Coach, what we do is we support families, parents with and I help them advocate. So we allow the parent to remain the parent. They don't have to fight the battle. We go in side by side and walk with you through the IEP process. Typically, um, we look over your paperwork, do a paperwork review. We'll go through and put together a list of things that we need to that you as a parent need to consider, and then we will walk with you. This is an opportunity for the parents to not have to fight the system. Spending more than 2 decades as an educator and as a special education teacher and campus leader, I know how the system works. I know how the system doesn't work. And I know currently in the United States, there is very little, if any, accountability for special education at a federal level. Yes, and that's twofold. One, I know there's a lot going on with the reorg of the Department of Education and all that, and there's some actual good things that could come out of this. There could actually be the enforcement arm. There's been talk about it going to the Department of Justice, which would be good because the Department of Education has no enforcement or investigative arm, and the Department of Justice does. But what happens typically is a school, and I know I've seen this in Texas, a school will get will do something that's in violation of an IEP, or they'll do this para model, which we talked about earlier, where they use pairs instead of teachers. And they will get told that they can't do that. I mean, that they have to have a teacher in that role. And so the school goes, okay, we'll do it. And then very next year, they're doing the same thing. They don't make a change. Why? Because they don't have to, because there's no accountability. There's no sending the money back. Um, it's basically, it's not even a slap on the wrist. And so what you do is you have a perpetual violations. And in education, special education is the only thing where the parent is left to do the enforcement. Because if parents don't complain, nothing happens. It's never going to change. And unfortunately, I mean, it has to be done one IEP at a time. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to create change. We've got a part of the group that I work with. We're working. If this government shutdown, there, there's supposed to be a group going to DC, I think next week. Yeah, next week. So I don't know what that's going to do with the government shutdown. I still think they're trying to work on offsite meetings, but we're trying to do it both at the state level and at the federal level. Have some input, some teeth into IDEA and into education, special education law, because there is no accountability. I mean, when you file an OCR complaint or a state complaint, they will, if a parent wins, a parent, the school's found to have not followed the IEP, not provided FAPE, they will make the change, or they'll say they'll make the change, and they'll do some of it. But time in and time out and time again, we're seeing more and more schools just blatantly saying, "I'm not going to do it," or not saying I'm going to. They just don't do it. They don't even say it. They just don't do it. So we've got to work. We got to work together. We got to work together as parents. I know I talk to so many teachers that are so frustrated because they know what their school is asking them to do um, is not providing for either they're not providing the services needed or they're flat out lying to parents. And they are put in a really tough position because if they complain or even if they let the parents know what's going on, they may not have a job, or their job will be made so they'll be made so miserable in their job they don't want to be back. So what happens next after that? Well, they get a new teacher in who's new maybe just first year sped, and they don't know any different. So the schools are able to, you know, tell them again what's going on or how this works. And even though it's not right, why would you think your school is going to lie to you? Why would you think your supervisor is going to lie to you? And it's not a case of supervisors not knowing. They know, they know. It's just they're more concerned with compliance and budgets than they are student success. And they'll tell you they're not, but with their actions show differently. And that's not a school issue, that's a nationwide issue. So we're going to speak loud, we're going to be loud, and we're going to be creating a small army. So hey, if you watch this and you want to be a part, whether you're a teacher, whether you're another advocate, we fix this system that is desperately broken. So without any other questions, I'm going to call it a day. We'll be back on here next Tuesday, 11:30 a.m. Central Time. We also do a Facebook, think about it, on Thursday nights at 7 p.m. On the IEP Coach Facebook page. So if you have any questions, the IEPcoach.com. You can has my cell phone. You can feel free to text me. You can email me. There's also the ability to message directly to me in there. And we're building out the website. We've got most of it, but we're building a members area, which we will be providing training coming. One of the biggest things I've had requests for is teachers needing help because they're not being trained. But I'm not going to go start down that path because I'll be here for another hour talking about that, and I don't want to keep everybody. But we will talk about the training and the lack thereof of teachers in an IEP process, the procedures of developing an IEP, implementing an IEP, goals, PLAF, all of that. So y'all have a great day. Thanks for joining, and we will talk to you soon.